What value does an organization receive from being diverse? This question is one that has driven researchers to try and understand why should we care in an organization about whether or not all of our people think the same, look the same, or have come from a similar background. Because what we know is that people who hire people for an organization are more likely to hire someone who has had a similar experience culturally and background-wise to bring them to where they are. But that doesn't lead to the most diversity, and yet we see organizations saying that they value diversity, that diversity is important to them. So what then is the value of diversity in an organization? Organizations tend to function along very strict sort of parameters, a bottom line, people served. So what value is added to an organization through diversity? Before we can get there, we need to consider this term, hegemony. Hegemony, it refers to the dominant culture, the dominant cultural group identity that exists within a broader culture. The influence of hegemony is that certain things are normalized, are considered to be acceptable in culture, and certain things are not. So things that belong to the hegemonic group, the dominant cultural group identity, would be things that are normalized, and things that fall outside of that are not. Which means that if you don't belong to the hegemonic group, then you have to adapt. It's where we see things like code switching, where we adopt a different way of speaking or of making meaning when we don't belong to the dominant group. And we start to adopt the ways of speaking or of communicating that the dominant group uses. It's where we also see people start to feel like they're losing part of their identity and their cultural background when they exist in a dominant culture that doesn't value other cultures. So because this exists, whether or not we work at reducing it, it still exists. The hegemony of a given culture is always going to be there. There have been attempts at creating more diverse organizations that seek to buck or challenge the hegemony. But diversity alone does not necessarily create a great environment. Here's an illustration that can help us think about this. Imagine that you took zoo animals, and the zoo animals all came together to solve the problem of food. There wasn't enough food. The zookeepers hadn't been around for a while, and so the zoo animals were getting hungry. And so they all came together to try and solve the problem of the food shortage. The giraffe looked at the trees around them and said, I don't see a food shortage. We can just go to the trees. The penguin said, well, I'm down here on the ground and I can't reach the trees. It seems like you're only thinking about yourself. And the bear said, well, I see penguins around. I can just eat the penguins. This is a very diverse group, but the way that they are solving the problem isn't very intelligent. The problem of not having enough food isn't being solved well just because we have a diverse group. Diversity in itself will not lead to more innovative, productive, or collaborative teams and organizations. Just because you have a diverse team doesn't mean that you're more innovative. Doesn't mean that you're more productive. It doesn't mean that you work better together because you're diverse. In fact, research shows that teams where everyone belongs to the hegemonic group, they actually outperform teams that are just diverse. Now, this doesn't mean that diversity should be ignored, because what happens is if a diverse team is led by a culturally intelligent leader, by someone who understands who is represented and understands the people in their groups and the value of the diversity, those teams outperform any team. Diversity alone doesn't lead to more productivity, but a diverse team that's culturally aware and intelligent and understands how to work well together, they do outperform a team where everybody looks the same. To go back to our zoo example, if these animals start working together and some of the giraffes start pulling food from tops of the trees, and the penguins find a pond and they're able to search for fish, and the bears go to the guard's shack or the zookeeper shack and they raid the vending machines, and they start to function together and understand how each of them can contribute something to the team because of their diversity, they're more successful than if we try to ask the penguins and the raccoons and the bears to act like giraffes. If we don't understand the value of diversity and we're not culturally intelligent to understand what makes each person on our team unique and valuable, what insights do they bring, and how can we better communicate about those insights? If we don't have cultural intelligence, diversity is not the answer. Now, I want to be careful here. I don't want you to hear me say, avoid diversity. I hope that's not what you're hearing me say. The answer is becoming more aware of the experiences of others and thinking more deeply about your own cultural values and where those cultural values may be leading you to assumptions. And if you can start to ask good questions and listen to people with different cultural backgrounds, you will be more effective, innovative, productive, and collaborative. A good team has those components, and a diverse team with culturally intelligent people are more effective.